So in the following, I will discuss how the University of New England Library used open metadata along with more conventional sources and the programming language R to analyze library databases to determine their actual and potential usefulness for research. This analysis was done as part of a larger project which aimed to review our library's aggregated database services to determine, firstly, the level of overlap between our three aggregator packages from ProQuest, EBSCO, and Gale, and secondly, to determine the extent to which the unique content identified in each has value for teaching and learning and research at our institution. But the ultimate goal was to collect data to support future decisions on cancelling or keeping these resources. So the process consisted of the following steps. So the first thing that was done was an overlap analysis. And then with the results, the results of the overlap analysis were evaluated first in terms of usage, and then in terms of fit for learning and teaching, and finally in terms of fit for research. The first step, performing an overlap analysis, was surprisingly easy. So our library management system, ALMA, has an overlap analysis tool that lets you compare two discrete collections. You select a source and a target collection, press a button, and presto, in a minute or two, it spits out 4 reports. So the first is a complete overlap report, which lists titles in both sources with matching coverage. The partial overlap report gives instances where the same title exists in each source, but there's only partial overlap. And the title overlap report provides cases where the same title is present in each source, but there's no overlap. And finally, the unique title reports, as the name suggests, lists items that are unique to the target source. So the method we pursued was to compare the 27 databases in our EBSCO and Gale packages with one source from ProQuest, which was ProQuest Central. So in effect, we were benchmarking against ProQuest Central. So we had a number of reasons to benchmark against ProQuest Central. The first was since the ProQuest aggregation is one database and the other packages are differentiated, it made sense to interrogate the differentiated sources since there might be a chance to disaggregate those. The second reason was that the UNE library uses Primo as our web scale discovery service, which, like ProQuest, is an ex libris product. So although discovery layers in theory work equally well with the metadata from any vendor, we were advised that there are operational advantages in being wholly within an ex libris universe. So if we were to choose one service to keep, everything else being equal, we would prefer to keep ProQuest Central. So of the 4 overlap reports produced for each source, it was in fact the final unique title report that was key for the evaluation process. So the first step in evaluating the interrogated resources was to determine the level of usage of individual titles in each of the 27 unique title reports. Usage statistics provided by a serials team were available at both the title level and for each database. To make the dating matching as simple and precise as possible, we only matched ISNs. With a few exceptions, this represented the greater part of the academic content anyway. So doing overlap analyses of library resources is in fact nothing new, and there is a sizable professional literature on the topic. Connecting overlap results to usage statistics is also nothing out of the ordinary. However, in most case studies I read, they spoke about data matching with Excel. I did in fact use Excel for some parts of the work, but I had the luxury of having a collaborator, our repository search analyst, who could write code in the programming language R. So we used R for the data matching done on the usage statistics and for determining the fit of the target resources for research. Determining the fit of the interrogated resources for learning and teaching entailed working with each database as a whole rather than with unique title lists. The first step was to compile data on the subjects taught at our institution at the faculty, school and award level, and then to link this to EFTSL, so equivalent full-time study load numbers for a specific point in time. It was particularly important for us to use EFTSOL rather than student numbers, as the average load across our undergraduate cohort is in fact less than 60%. So on average, almost all our students are doing part-time. For the subject-specific databases, I took the vendor scope notes at face value, whereas for multidisciplinary databases, I assessed the subject coverage by way of an analysis of the subject headings in title lists from the vendors. This third step in the evaluation process, the substantive topic of this paper, was to determine the actual and potential usefulness of the identified unique titles for research. The first task was to determine how the target resources had been used in research produced at the University of New England. This was done in one of two ways. The first method involved matching ISSNs from our unique title lists with a complete set of ISSNs culled from our institutional repository. So for each database, we ascertained the number of unique journal titles used for publishing research from UNE in each resource, the frequency of usage for each unique journal title, and the total usage including multiple uses of one journal title. The second method involved using open metadata. While the analysis of our repository holdings was directed to publication venues for research, it would be even more enlightening to discover what publications had been used in the production of research as well. This could be done by gathering and analysing the cited references in publications produced by UNE authors. I had initially wondered if we could web scrape records in our repository to get this data, but our research analyst came up with a better idea, using open metadata from crossref. So crossref, for those who don't know, is one of the official registration agencies for DOIs, Digital Object Identifiers, one of the many PIDs. And in the process of issuing DOIs, crossref collects metadata for all the items issued a DOI. As the metadata they collect is open, it can be downloaded with their API and used for whatever analytical purpose you have in mind. We had already downloaded the crossref metadata source in 2019 as part of a gap analysis project for our repository. At that time, there were 100 million records in the source, with more than 76 million of these having an ISSN. A powerful feature of the crossref metadata is that it includes a field for cited references. That is a list of the sources mentioned in the footnotes and bibliographies of the target articles. Our analysis of the crossref metadata began by interrogating this corpus of 76 million journal article records with ISNs to find items by UNE authors. From the metadata to these, we extracted a corpus of works that these articles had cited themselves, that is, all their cited references. The resulting pool of 93,374 journal articles was then reduced to a list of 9,046 ISSNs, what I called the UNE crossref usage list. From this list, we worked to match ISNs in the 27 unique lists from the overlap analysis. The final results, similar to what from the repository results, was a data set consisting of a total for unique ISNs in each interrogated database that were also in the UNE crossref usage list, frequency numbers for multiple matches of ISNs in the interrogated sources, and a tabulation of ranges of repeat instances of unique ISSNs. The final evaluation involved determining the potential usefulness for research of the unique titles discovered in the overlap analysis. This was done by comparing ISSNs in the unique title reports to a range of journal lists that indicate minimal acceptability for research at the lowest end to high quality at the other. These lists were the last era journal lists, 2018, the constituent citation indexes in Web of Science, the Scopus titles source list, the Australian Business Deans Committee journal list, and then a list that we compiled ourselves, so a list of unique journals in the crossref metadata source. So that was the largest list by far, with more than 85,000 titles. So just a last point before the end. So a note on the discipline bias of these quality lists. With the exception of the ERA journal list, there is a clear discipline bias in each of the remaining quality lists. The ABDC list, for example, is targeted at journals for business and so had most meaning for databases from this discipline. However, a number of databases outside of business had good representation in this list too. As is well known, Scopus and Web of Science have a clear bias towards the hard sciences. However, with Web of Science, there was at least the constituent arts and humanities and social sciences citation indexes. Finally, I would have expected a strong bias to the sciences with the crossref metadata source as well. However, many HAS databases were quite well represented in this source. The extent of the subject bias in crossref would, of course, be an interesting topic. Excuse me, would be an interesting topic to investigate further. So, just summing up. So, what did we learn from this process? Some of the methods we used are well known. So, for example, overlap analysis is nothing new, as is matching these results to usage statistics. However, doing data matching with R was a technique that at least I didn't find discussed in the literature on the topic. Assessing what journals are being used for publication at an institution through analysis of repository holdings is also not groundbreaking, although doing this with the help of R is much less common. On the other hand, using open metadata as a source to find works by researchers from our institution and then analysing this metadata to find cited references might be an innovation. Similarly, using R to match a corpus of publications against what I've called quality lists might also be a technique others could consider for their own research evaluation purposes.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much, Gilbert. Nice to round off our day by closing off with some of the open methods you mentioned in your presentation. Now, there's quite a few questions actually have popped up, so I'll see how we go for time. The first one is, have you made any of your code available for others to use?
At this stage, we haven't, but we should do that. So that's a good point, right? So, I mean, that's one of the great things with using R and Python is that, you know, you can post it and then it's reusable. So,
yeah. And on that point, someone asked, how easy do you think other libraries could reuse these methods?
So, yeah, I think yes, I think they'd be relatively easy to reuse because, you know, like in a sense, what we were doing with R was relatively simple. It was just data matching, you know, from one source across to another source. And as I mentioned, the key kind of linking piece was ISSNs. So that was kind of the principle. So, you know, it wouldn't really take much tweaking of the code, I would imagine, to use a different, you know, target source and do the processing that way.
Of course, the hot question, why R instead of Python?
Yeah, because my collaborator is an R fanatic and won't touch Python, right? So I guess Python could have been used just as well, but there was just the contingency that, you know, we had someone who loves R and was willing to do the coding in that format.
Fair enough. And our final question, did you factor in the age of the citations in your analysis? For example, does something cited 10 years ago impact on today's research needs?
Okay, so we didn't really use citation analysis as such. So what we were doing was matching, like for the research part at least, you know, a list of the journals that our authors have published in, and then we were checking whether those particular journals were in the databases that we were evaluating. And then the next step there was that we were actually using the cited references in articles by our researchers. So in that case, they were, you know, that was the works that they had used. So we were checking whether we've got access to those resources because they would be, so their resources used in the production of research and not just for publication. And then with the last, you know, section, that was just really checking ISNs off against, you know, the Scopus journal list or the ABDC list, etc. So there were no citations involved at all.
Good for you. Let's get away from all this.